Signing up for your first event on iRacing can seem a bit daunting. That's why in episode 2 of iRacing for Beginners, I'm going to be showing you how to actually sign up for a practice session or a test session so you can get some laps and comfortable on the sim before you hop into your first race. We're back on the iRacing UI, and right up here in the top right, you'll see the options to race now or test drive. Now, this is one of the easiest ways to get situated. You're going to want to go to test drive. If you have just recently installed iRacing, it's probably going to ask you how you'd like to launch the sim on your monitors. I would suggest hitting auto configure, and then we'll move on to adjusting graphic sessions in a minute. For now, we're going to join our first ever session on the sim. So you're going to choose the car and track that you would like to test at. I'm racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Pocono Raceway this weekend, so I'm going to practice there to get some laps and prepare. Once you choose those accordingly, you can just hit test drive, and the sim will begin starting, and you're almost ready to take your first laps. As you can see, the sim has loaded up. We're at Pocono Raceway in iRacing with the right car in the top right of the screen. Before we hop into anything too specific, I do want to mention that the graphics settings should have been auto-configured if you are getting into iRacing a basic way, racing on a single monitor, even if you're in an actual simulator cockpit. But if you're at your desk with a single monitor and you did auto-configure, it should work according to your graphics card monitor settings. If not, you can adjust those in the options graphics settings. If you have triple monitors and want to learn how to set up triple monitors for iRacing, it's pretty important you get all those settings adjusted properly before you actually begin driving, just for the ultimate immersion, comfort, and get it all actually situated in the most realistic way possible so that it doesn't interfere with you while driving. If you do want to do that, I have a link to the video in the description below called How to Set Up Triple Monitors for iRacing Without Using NVIDIA Surround. The problem with NVIDIA Surround is it spans the sim across all three screens as if it's one giant monitor. And not only does that have some issues when trying to open and close other applications or programs, but it forces iRacing in full screen mode, where I like to run it in a borderless windowed mode. There's literally no difference as far as graphic settings or what it looks like, how it feels. It's actually just more convenient because, for example, I can drag a program down from my fourth monitor up above down here without it making me black screen. If I were to do that in full screen mode, the sim would black screen for a second and then adjust to windowed mode, which likely can often lead to it being resized into the incorrect scaling. And obviously you don't want that if you're in the middle of driving. I have a fourth monitor, helps with streaming or recording like in this situation, but even if you just want to hit your taskbar while in sim and pull up a browser on one of your side monitors, obviously not your main one where you're trying to look out the windshield, but it's super useful. It's the best way to set them up, so definitely use that video to understand how to properly set them up and fix it, because a lot of times when there's updates, sometimes they get resized or it messes things up and you have to reconfigure it all. It's not as easy as just going to options and graphics. There's some things you have to do in the iRacing documents folder, so definitely follow that tutorial I made already regarding that. All right, so without further ado, let's understand what we're looking at here when we're in sim. There's not too many options. Right here in the bottom left, you'll have information about the track, the race, incident count, status, track conditions, which is super helpful. Your laps will pop up here. There'll be an arrow too, so you can scroll between practice, qualifying, and the race when in a race session, and then all the entries that may be in the actual session. So there's some information up here at the top. There's this big green button that hits test. So once your monitors are configured properly, you'll be able to hit that button and begin driving. But before we do that, it's important all your equipment is working properly. So that's where you're going to want to go to options, where it'll probably say configure controls instead of this big green button that says test. And when you hit that, it'll bring you to this session so you can calibrate all your equipment. So for me, I have an H pattern shifter that you can see I calibrated. If you want to calibrate each thing, you can just hit that and then you program the pedal. So for example, the pedals, it's wide open, then lift. You can calibrate that, the clutch pedal. And now the brake is something that a lot of people don't understand how to calibrate. You can basically adjust the sensitivity with it, or of it, without adjusting some of the other settings just by your input. So if you quickly spike it, it'll make it more sensitive than if you gradually push it down. It's a lot harder to get to max brake pressure depending on what kind of pedals you do have. Another thing is you can adjust sensitivity with how far it travels, of course. If I only calibrate to here and I say that's all the way down, well, now my brake's going to be super sensitive. 50% brake is like that if I only calibrate it to there. But I try to calibrate mine all the way down so that lockup feels like I'm standing on the brake pedal, much like it would in my real-life race car. So if I'm, at a track like Pocono, I might go into the corner and brake like that, trail brake. Maybe a Martinsville, I can get a lot more brake pressure without locking up. But other than that, you'll calibrate your steering wheel left to right. We see our MPI steering wheel in there, just like the one we have on our sim right here. Pretty cool. And then we'll be able to actually start driving from there. So we're going to hop in the cockpit. We're going to adjust our seat here, pull off pit road, and start turning our first laps on iRacing. Now, while driving, if you need to adjust your field of view or anything, you can simply use the bracket keys on your keyboard. That'll pan your view in or out, just like this. So whatever's comfortable for you. I adjust mine within about 5 points of probably various cars and tracks. This one I might run 195. The NASCAR Cup Series car I might run 190 even. It just depends, just because the views are a little bit different. But you should be close to the same across the board, just for comfort and consistency. Once you're driving, it's going to be up to actually getting more comfortable behind the wheel, and that's a whole different series, is learning about the actual driving side of things. Right now, we're going to focus more on the getting comfortable with iRacing itself as a program and a service. When you're ready to come to a stop, you can hit escape or this button up here in the top left of your screen, or another hotkey you may have mapped to exit the car. So that's how easy it is to get into your first session, begin driving. If you crash or blow a motor or actually enter pit road on your own, you can hit request new car and it'll do that for you. And then when you're in real time, you'll see that happen so that you can begin testing again without any damage or issues to your current vehicle. Up next in episode 3 of iRacing for Beginners, we're going to talk about some of the camera controls and viewing or creating replays while in a session. That's going to be pretty short and quick, and after that, we'll talk more about some of the settings you may want as far as graphics, driving settings, and much more in the following episode as well. So, thank you all for watching. I appreciate the support as always. I hope you're enjoying this journey so far, and I'll see you all in the next video.